Part 1-1. The ground trembled slightly as the ancient systems roared to life after 1,000,000 years of silence. Deep beneath the surface of what was once called Earth, hidden in the heart of a massive underground vault known as Sanctuary Prime, humanity began to stir. The air inside the vault was stale but breathable, maintained by machines that had functioned tirelessly for centuries without fail. Rows upon rows of cryogenic pods lined the walls, their glass surfaces fogged with condensation. Inside each pod lay a person frozen in time, preserved against all odds. One pod hissed softly as its seal broke open. A man blinked awake, disoriented and groggy. His name was Daniel Carter, though it took him a moment to remember it. He squinted at the dim lights above him, his mind struggling to process where, or even when, he was. Slowly, memories came, flooding back. The warnings about Earth's failing environment, the desperate decision to enter cryosleep, and the hope that someday things would improve enough for them to wake up again. That day had finally come. Daniel sat up, feeling stiff and sore. His muscles protested every movement, unused to activity after such a long period of dormancy. Across the room, another pod opened with a soft whirring sound. A woman emerged, her dark hair matted and her face pale from lack of sunlight. She rubbed her eyes and looked around, clearly just as confused as Daniel. Her name was Laura Bennett, and she was a biologist by trade. "Is this real?" she asked hoarsely, her voice cracking from disuse. "It has to be," Daniel replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. He swung his legs over the edge of the pod and stood cautiously, testing his balance. The floor beneath his feet was cold and metallic, grounding him in reality. Other pods around them were beginning to activate as well, releasing more survivors from their long slumber. Some groaned in discomfort, others simply stared blankly, overwhelmed by the sudden return to consciousness. A robotic voice echoed through the chamber, calm and mechanical. "Welcome back, inhabitants of Sanctuary Prime. Environmental conditions on the surface have stabilized. It is safe to proceed." The announcement sent a ripple of murmurs through the group. Safe? What did that mean? Was Earth still recognizable? Or had it changed beyond imagination during their absence? Laura moved closer to Daniel, wrapping her arms around herself as if seeking warmth. "Do you think anyone else survived out there?" she asked quietly. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know, but we'll find out soon enough." They followed instructions displayed on glowing panels along the walls, guiding them toward an exit chamber. Along the way, they passed through corridors, filled with equipment and supplies, remnants of a civilization that no longer existed. Everything seemed eerily untouched, as though the passage of time had been frozen here too. As they walked, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. There should have been noise, movement, signs of life. Instead, there was only silence. When they reached the exit chamber, a large metal door slid open with a grinding sound. Beyond it lay a tunnel sloping upward, leading to the surface. Natural light filtered down from above, casting faint beams onto the walls. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, fresh air drifted into the depths of Sanctuary Prime. It smelled strange, earthy, tinged with unfamiliar scents, but it was undeniably real. Daniel stepped forward cautiously, followed closely by Laura and the others. Their footsteps echoed in the narrow passage, growing louder as they ascended. With each step, anticipation built within them. What awaited them outside? Would they recognize anything? Or would they find themselves strangers on their own planet? Finally, they emerged into the open. The sight that greeted them was breathtaking and utterly alien. Towering crystalline structures stretched toward the sky, shimmering in hues of blue and green. Rivers of glowing liquid wound through the landscape, pulsating gently like living veins. The sky above was painted with swirling colors, unlike any sunset or sunrise they had ever seen. Stars twinkled faintly in the distance, forming constellations that none of them recognized. For a moment, no one spoke. They simply stood there, taking it all in. This wasn't the Earth they remembered. It was beautiful, yes, but also unsettling. Where were the cities, the forests, the oceans? Had nature reclaimed everything so completely that nothing remained of human civilization? Laura broke the silence first. It's incredible, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Daniel nodded slowly. Yeah, but it's not home. His words carried a weight that resonated with everyone present. Home was supposed to be familiar, comforting. This place felt foreign, almost otherworldly. As they ventured farther from the entrance, they noticed strange plants dotting the terrain. They glowed faintly, emitting a soft hum when touched. Laura knelt beside one, examining it closely. These aren't like anything I've studied before, she said, excitement creeping into her tone despite the strangeness of their situation. Evolution must have taken some wild turns while we were asleep. Daniel scanned the horizon, searching for signs of intelligent life. So far, there were none. No buildings, no vehicles, no people. Just endless stretches of bizarre landscapes, stretching as far as the eye could see. We need to explore, he said firmly. Find out what happened here. Maybe we're not alone. The group agreed, splitting into smaller teams to cover more ground. Armed with basic tools and recording devices salvaged from Sanctuary Prime, they set off in different directions. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown, yet there was no turning back now. Humanity had slept for 1,000,000 years, and now it was time to wake up fully. As they walked, Daniel couldn't help but wonder, what stories did this new Earth hold, and what role would they play in its future? Part 2. The group moved cautiously across the alien landscape, their boots crunching softly on the strange, glowing ground beneath them. The air was cool and carried a faint sweetness, unlike anything they had ever smelled before. Laura stayed, close to Daniel as they explored, her eyes wide with curiosity. She couldn't stop marveling at the glowing plants and shimmering crystals that surrounded them. Everything seemed alive in some way, humming faintly as if breathing. It's like the whole planet is alive, she whispered, half to herself. Daniel nodded but kept his focus ahead. He was less interested in the beauty of this new world and more concerned about finding answers. Where were the cities? The ruins? Any trace of human civilization? So far, there was nothing, just endless stretches of bizarre terrain. It made him uneasy. 1,000,000 years was a long time, but surely something should have remained. As they walked, the group came across what looked like the remnants of an old structure. At first glance, it appeared to be little more than a pile of rubble, overgrown, with glowing vines. But as they got closer, they noticed fragments of metal and concrete peeking through the vegetation. Daniel crouched down and brushed away some of the plant life, revealing a rusted sign. The words were faded, but he could still make out part of it. Central Park. Laura gasped. Central Park? That used to be in New York City. Her voice trembled with a mix of excitement and disbelief. This must have been one of the biggest parks back then. Look how small it is now, like everything else has swallowed it up. Daniel stood up, scanning the area. If this is all that's left of New York, then we're not going to find much else. Whatever happened after we went into cryo-sleep, it wiped almost everything clean. The discovery left the group somber. They had hoped to find traces of their past, something to connect them to the world they once knew. Instead, they were faced with the stark reality that they were strangers here now. This wasn't their Earth anymore. They decided to press on, hoping to find more clues. After walking for another hour, they stumbled upon something even stranger, a massive tree-like structure towering high above the landscape. Its trunk was smooth and metallic, glittering in the light while its branches stretched wide, ending in glowing orbs that pulsed rhythmically. It didn't look natural, yet it didn't seem entirely man-made either. What is that thing? One of the team members asked, pointing at the towering structure. No one had an answer. Laura approached it cautiously, reaching out to touch the trunk. As soon as her fingers brushed against the surface, the orbs on the branches lit up brighter, casting a warm golden glow over the area. She pulled her hand back quickly, startled. Did I do that? It reacted to you, Daniel said, frowning. Like it's alive, or maybe sentient. The idea sent a shiver down everyone's spines. If this was some kind of living machine, or, worse, something created by someone else, it raised questions they weren't ready to face yet. Before they could investigate further, a low rumbling sound echoed in the distance. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Everyone froze, looking around nervously. "What is that?" Laura asked, gripping Daniel's arm instinctively. "I don't know," Daniel replied, his voice tight. "But we should probably move." They hurried away from the metallic tree, heading toward higher ground to get a better view. As they climbed a nearby hill, the source of the noise became clear. In the distance, a swarm of insect-like creatures was moving across the plains. They were enormous, each one bigger than a car, with segmented bodies and multiple legs that clicked loudly as they moved. Their wings shimmered like glass, reflecting the light in dazzling patterns. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying. None of them had ever seen anything like these creatures before. Were they animals? Machines? Something in between? And most importantly, were they dangerous? "They're heading this way," Laura said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sure enough, the swarm was making a beeline for their location. Daniel glanced around, trying to think of a plan. "We need to hide," he said urgently. "Find cover. Now." The group scrambled to take shelter behind a cluster of large crystalline rocks nearby. They crouched low, holding their breath, as the creatures drew closer. The noise was deafening now, a cacophony of clicks and whirs that filled the air. Laura clutched Daniel's sleeve tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, she thought they'd been spotted. But then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the creatures passed by without stopping, continuing their march across the plains. When the danger had passed, the group let out a collective sigh of relief. "What were those things?" One of them asked, still shaken. "No idea," Daniel admitted. "But we need to be careful. This place isn't safe, not for us anyway." Despite the close call, Laura couldn't shake her fascination with the creatures. "Do you think they're native to this planet now? Or did they evolve here after we left?" she wondered aloud. "Hard to say," Daniel replied. "But if they've adapted to survive here, maybe we can learn something from them. Assuming we don't get eaten first," the group pressed on, keeping a wary eye out for any more surprises. As they continued exploring, they began to notice signs of other life forms too. Strange bird-like creatures with translucent wings, tiny insectoids that darted around in flashes of color, and even larger predators lurking in the shadows. Each new discovery added to the growing sense that this world was teeming with life, but none of it was familiar. Eventually, they reached the edge of a vast canyon. Peering over the rim, they saw a river of glowing liquid winding its way through. The chasm below, the water, or whatever it was, sparkled like liquid starlight, casting an ethereal glow onto the walls of the canyon. On the far side, they spotted what looked like ruins rising from the mist. Broken columns and crumbling arches jutted out of the ground, partially submerged in the glowing river. "That looks man-made," Laura said, pointing. "Or at least, it used to be." Daniel nodded. "Let's check it out. Maybe we'll find some answers there." Carefully, they made their way down into the canyon, navigating the steep slopes with difficulty. By the time they reached the ruins, the sun, or whatever passed for a sun in this strange sky, was beginning to set, bathing the area in soft twilight hues. The ruins were even more decayed up close, overtaken by glowing moss and vines. But amidst the destruction, they found fragments of writing carved into stone tablets. The language was unfamiliar, written in symbols that none of them recognized. "This wasn't made by humans," Daniel said grimly, "at least not the humans we knew." Laura knelt beside one of the tablets, running her fingers lightly over the symbols. "Whoever made this, they were intelligent, advanced even. Do you think they're still around?" Before Daniel could answer, a rustling sound came from behind them. They turned sharply, expecting to see another swarm of creatures or perhaps a predator. Instead, they found themselves face to face with something completely unexpected. Standing before them was a tall insectoid being. Its body was sleek and segmented, with iridescent armor that shimmered in the fading light. Multiple faceted eyes glinted as it studied them curiously, tilting its head slightly. Long, delicate antennae twitched, sensing their presence. It didn't move aggressively, but its sheer size and alien appearance were enough to leave the group frozen in shock. For a long moment no one spoke. Then slowly the creature raised one clawed limb and pointed toward the ruins. It made a series of clicking sounds, almost melodic in tone, before stepping back and waiting. Laura swallowed hard, breaking the silence. I think it wants us to follow it. Daniel hesitated, unsure if trusting this creature was wise, but they had come this far, and right now it was their only lead. All right, he said finally. Let's see where it takes us. With cautious steps, they followed the insectoid being deeper into the ruins, their hearts racing with a mix of fear and hope. Whatever awaited them next, one thing was certain. This new Earth held secrets far greater than they had imagined. Part 4. Back at Sanctuary Prime, Daniel spent most of his time in the control room, surrounded by dusty screens and blinking consoles. The vault was still operational, its systems humming steadily despite the passage of 1,000,000 years. It was here that he hoped to uncover the truth about what had happened to Earth and humanity while they slept. Laura joined him occasionally, bringing updates from her interactions with the Zixar. Together they pieced together fragments of history, slowly unraveling the story of their lost world. One day, as Daniel sifted through old data logs, he stumbled upon something extraordinary. Hidden deep within the archives was a series of encrypted files labeled Project Genesis. At first, the files resisted decryption, but after hours of work, Daniel managed to crack the code. What he found shocked him to his core. Project Genesis had been humanity's last-ditch effort to save itself. Faced with environmental collapse, rising temperatures, dying oceans, and toxic air, the leaders of the time had decided on a radical solution. They planned to terraform Earth's atmosphere, using advanced nanotechnology designed to repair ecological damage. The project required massive resources and global cooperation, but it came with risks. If the nanobots malfunctioned or spread uncontrollably, they could cause even greater destruction. Laura arrived just as Daniel finished reading the final report. Her face fell as she listened to his summary. So, this is what went wrong, she said softly. The nanobots didn't fix the planet. They destroyed it. Daniel nodded grimly. It looks that way. The logs say the nanobots multiplied, faster than expected, consuming everything in their path. Plants, animals, entire ecosystems, they all collapsed. Humanity's leaders realized too late that they couldn't stop it. That's why they initiated cryo-sleep for survivors. They thought if they waited long enough, Earth would heal itself. But instead it changed completely, Laura added, shaking her head. And now we're back, trying to figure out how to live here again. As they digested the information, Laura shared something Kale had told her earlier. According to the Zixar, the nanobots hadn't disappeared entirely. Some had evolved, merging with organic matter to create the glowing plants, rivers, and even the crystalline structures dotting the landscape. They call it the living light, Laura explained. They believe it's part of Earth's new balance, a fusion of technology and nature. Daniel frowned. That explains a lot. But if those nanobots are still active, we need to be careful. We don't know what might trigger them. Their conversation was interrupted by Robert Hayes, who entered the control room with an impatient scowl. We can't keep sitting around like this, he said sharply. Every day we waste is another day we're vulnerable. The Zixar may seem friendly now, but we don't know their true intentions. We should focus on securing our own survival, not relying on aliens. Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. Robert, they've done nothing but help us so far. Without them, we'd still be wandering aimlessly. And what happens when their help runs out? Robert shot back. What happens when they realize we're competing for the same resources? Trust me, diplomacy won't save us if things Go south. Laura stepped forward, her voice firm. Kale has been honest with us. They've shown us their history, shared their knowledge, and welcomed us into their home. If we turn our backs on them now, we're no better than the mistakes of our past. Robert glared at her but didn't argue further. He stormed out of the room, leaving tension hanging in the air. Daniel watched him go, his expression troubled. He's not wrong to be cautious, he admitted. But I agree with you. We need to work with the Zixar, not against them. Over the next few days, tensions between the humans grew. Some sided with Robert, believing they should prioritize their own needs above all else. Others supported Daniel and Laura, advocating for cooperation with the Zixar. The divide became harder to ignore, threatening the fragile unity of the group. Meanwhile, Laura continued her efforts to build trust with the Zixar. She spent hours practicing their harmonic communication, learning to interpret their glowing symbols and gestures. Kale proved to be an eager teacher, often staying up late into the night to share stories of the Zixar's struggles during the millennia humans had slept. Through these exchanges, Laura learned more about their culture and values. The Zixar revered harmony with their environment, seeing themselves as stewards rather than rulers of the land. One evening, as Laura sat with Kale near the edge of the settlement, she noticed something unusual in the distance, a faint rhythmic glow emanating from the horizon. Pointing it out, she asked Kale what it was. The Zixar clicked softly, its antennae twitching. After a moment, it gestured for her to follow. Curious, Laura accompanied Kale toward the source of the light. As they approached, she saw that it came from a cluster of towering crystals embedded in the ground. Unlike the glowing plants and rivers, these crystals pulsed in sync with a low hum. Kale touched one gently, causing it to brighten momentarily. Then, turning to Laura, it pointed to the crystals and made a series of clicks that translated roughly to memory. Laura's eyes widened. These crystals, they hold memories? Kyle nodded, clicking again. Encouraged, Laura reached out, tentatively, and placed her hand on the crystal. Immediately, images flooded her mind, blurry at first, then clearer. She saw flashes of ancient human cities bustling with life, followed by scenes of chaos as the nanobots spread uncontrollably. There were glimpses of desperate scientists working tirelessly to contain the disaster, their faces etched with fear and regret. Finally, she saw the decision to initiate cryosleep, the hope that someday Earth would heal. When the vision ended, Laura pulled her hand away, breathless. "This is incredible," she whispered. "These crystals, they're like records of the past." Kyle clicked approvingly, then led her to another crystal. This one held different memories, images of the Zixar adapting to the new world, struggling to survive amidst the ruins of humanity's civilization. Laura felt a pang of guilt as she watched their hardships, knowing that her species' actions had contributed to their suffering. Returning to the settlement, Laura shared her discovery with Daniel and the others. "The Zixar have been preserving Earth's history," she said excitedly. "If we can access those memories, we might learn more about what happened, and maybe even find clues about other survivors." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "It's worth investigating, but we'll need Kale's help to understand it fully." With Kale's guidance, the humans began exploring the crystal fields more thoroughly. Each crystal contained fragments of the past, offering insights into both human and Zixar history. One particularly striking memory revealed the existence of underground bunkers scattered across the globe, places where small groups of humans had attempted to ride out the catastrophe. Without entering cryosleep, some of these bunkers might still be intact, potentially housing survivors or valuable resources. The discovery reignited hope among the group. For the first time since waking, they had a clear goal: to locate these bunkers and determine whether anyone else had endured the long centuries alongside them. But the journey wouldn't be easy. The bunkers were likely buried beneath layers of vegetation and debris, and reaching them would require navigating treacherous terrain. As plans took shape, tensions within the group resurfaced. Robert argued that searching for bunkers was a waste of time. "We don't know if anyone's still alive down there," he insisted. "We should focus on fortifying our position here, With or without the Zixar, Daniel countered, his voice steady. If there are survivors, we owe it to them to try, and if not, we might still find supplies or technology that could help us rebuild. In the end, the majority agreed to proceed with the search. Laura worked closely with Kale to map out potential locations based on the crystal memories, while Daniel coordinated preparations for the expedition. Supplies were gathered, tools repaired, and strategies discussed. Despite lingering disagreements, the group united under a shared sense of purpose. On the morning of their departure, Kale accompanied them to the edge of the settlement. Using gestures and clicks, it conveyed a message of caution and solidarity. Laura smiled gratefully, placing a hand over her heart in a gesture of thanks. "We'll come back," she promised. "And we'll bring answers." As they set off into the unknown, the weight of their mission settled heavily on their shoulders. They carried not only the hopes of their own survival, but also the legacy of a world that had changed beyond recognition. With each step, they moved closer to uncovering the truth, and perhaps finding a way to reclaim their place in this strange, beautiful new Earth. Part 5. The journey to the first bunker was long and grueling. The landscape shifted constantly, from glowing rivers to jagged cliffs, each step revealing something new and alien. Daniel led the group, consulting the map Laura and Kale had created using the crystal memories. The path wasn't straightforward. Some areas were blocked by dense thickets of glowing vines, while others required careful navigation around unstable terrain. Despite their determination, progress was slow. Tensions within the group simmered just below the surface. Robert Hayes, who had grown increasingly vocal about his distrust of the Zixar, often voiced his concerns during breaks. "We're wasting time," he muttered one afternoon as they stopped to rest near a cluster of crystalline trees. "These bunkers are probably empty, or worse, collapsed. We should focus on securing our own resources." Laura shot him a sharp look. "And what do you suggest we do instead? Ignore the possibility that there might be other survivors? Or useful supplies?" Robert crossed his arms, his expression stubborn. "I'm just saying we need to prioritize. Trusting these creatures isn't going to solve our problems." Daniel stepped in before the argument could escalate. "We've already discussed this," he said firmly. "The bunkers are our best chance of finding answers. If you have a better idea, now's the time to share it." Robert didn't respond, but his silence spoke volumes. He turned away, muttering under his breath. The rest of the group exchanged uneasy glances, but said nothing. They all knew Robert's skepticism wasn't unfounded. It was natural to feel wary in such an unfamiliar world. But his constant negativity was starting to wear on everyone. As they continued their trek, Laura found herself thinking about Kale and the Zixar. She missed their calm presence and steady guidance. Without them, the expedition felt more uncertain, like they were walking blind into the unknown. Still, she reminded herself why they were doing this: to find answers, to reconnect with whatever remained of humanity, and to build a future where humans and Zixar could coexist peacefully. By the third day, they reached the coordinates marked on the map. What they found was both promising and disheartening. The entrance to the bunker was partially buried beneath layers of glowing moss and tangled roots. It took hours of digging and cutting to clear enough space to access the heavy metal door. When they finally managed to pry it open, the air inside was stale but breathable, a good sign. The interior of the bunker was dimly lit by emergency lights that flickered weakly. Dust covered every surface, and the walls were lined with shelves stocked with supplies that had long since expired. Laura ran her fingers over a canister labeled purified water, its contents undoubtedly useless after 1,000,000 years. "It looks like they tried to prepare for everything," she said softly. "But no one came back to check on them." Daniel nodded, his face grim. "Let's see if we can find anything useful." They split up to search the bunker, each person assigned a section to explore. Laura ventured deeper into the complex, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. She discovered rooms filled with rusted equipment, old computers, and stacks of paper documents yellowed with age. In one corner, she found a journal lying open on a desk. Its pages were brittle, but she carefully flipped through them, reading fragments of entries written by someone named Dr. Emily Carter. Day 43. Supplies holding steady, but morale is low. The nanobots continue to spread unchecked above ground. We fear it's only a matter of time before they reach us here. Day 102. 2 members of the team succumbed to illness today. We're running out of medicine. I don't know how much longer we can hold on. Day 187. This may be my last entry. If anyone finds this, know that we did everything we could. Humanity has always been resilient. Perhaps someday someone will carry the torch. Laura closed the journal, her throat tight with emotion. These people had fought so hard to survive, clinging to hope even as the world fell apart around them. She couldn't help but feel a deep sense of responsibility to honor their struggle by ensuring humanity wouldn't fail again. When she returned to the main chamber, she found Daniel examining a large control panel. "Anything?" she asked. He shook his head. "Most of the systems are dead, but I think I can get some of the power back online. There might be data stored here, logs, maybe even recordings." As Daniel worked, the rest of the group gathered supplies that were still intact, tools, spare parts, and a few containers of preserved food that miraculously hadn't spoiled. Robert, however, seemed distracted. He wandered off toward a narrow corridor leading away from the main chamber, ignoring calls for him to stay with the group. Minutes later, a loud crash echoed through the bunker. Everyone froze, then rushed toward the sound. They found Robert standing in front of a collapsed doorway, his face pale. "There's something in there," he said hoarsely, pointing at the rubble. "I heard movement." Daniel frowned. "Are you sure? It could just be shifting debris." "No," Robert insisted. "It sounded alive." Against better judgment, the group began clearing the rubble, their movements cautious. As they worked, the faint sound of scratching grew louder, sending chills down their spines. Finally, they uncovered a small opening. Peering inside, they saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at them. "It's trapped," Laura exclaimed, recognizing the creature as one of the insectoid beings similar to the Zixar, but smaller, weaker, and clearly injured. Its exoskeleton was cracked, and one of its legs was bent at an unnatural angle. It made soft clicking sounds, its antennae twitching feebly. Robert immediately stepped back, his hand reaching for a makeshift weapon. "We can't trust it. It could be dangerous." "Stop," Laura snapped, stepping between him and the creature. "Look at it. It's hurt. It's not attacking us." Daniel hesitated, then knelt beside the creature, examining its injuries. "It's young," he said quietly. "Probably got separated from its group during the collapse." Laura nodded. "We have to help it. If we leave it here, it'll die." Robert glared at her. "Why should we risk ourselves for some alien bug? For all we know, it's spying on us." "It's not a bug," Laura shot back. "It's intelligent, just like the Zixar, and if we want their trust, we need to show them we care." After a tense moment, Daniel sided with Laura. "She's right. Helping this creature might strengthen our bond with the Zixar. Besides, abandoning it would make us no better than the mistakes of our past." Reluctantly, the group agreed to bring the creature back to the settlement. Laura fashioned a sling from scraps of fabric to carry it, cradling it gently despite its strange appearance. As they made their way back, the creature's clicking grew, softer, almost grateful. When they returned to the Zixar settlement, Kale greeted them with obvious concern. Upon seeing the injured creature, it clicked rapidly, its antennae waving urgently. Laura explained what had happened, pointing to the bunker and mimicking the creature's injuries. Kyle responded with a series of melodic clicks, which Laura interpreted as gratitude. Under Kale's guidance, the humans helped nurse the creature back to health. Over time, it grew stronger, its glowing eyes brightening and its movements becoming more fluid. The Zixar treated it as one of their own, feeding it and tending to its wounds with remarkable patience. Through this act of kindness, the bond between humans and Zixar deepened, but not everyone was pleased. Robert watched from a distance, his jaw clenched. "This is a mistake," he muttered to himself. "One day they'll turn on us, and when they do, we'll regret trusting them." His words lingered in the air, a reminder of the fragile balance holding their alliance together. For now, peace prevailed. But how long would it last? Part 6. The injured creature, which the Zixar called Vin, recovered quickly under their care. Its presence in the settlement became a symbol of the growing bond between humans and the insectoid beings. Laura spent hours observing how the Zixar interacted with Vin, noting their gentle gestures and melodic clicks. It was clear that they valued compassion and cooperation above all else, a stark contrast to humanity's often selfish past. As days turned into weeks, the humans continued their efforts to adapt to this new world. They worked alongside the Zixar, learning how to cultivate glowing plants for food, purify water from the radiant rivers, and repair tools using materials scavenged from the ruins. The collaboration brought tangible results. Shelters were improved, supplies were better organized, and trust began to solidify between the two species. But beneath the surface, tensions remained. Robert Hayes grew increasingly restless. He rarely participated in group activities, preferring to keep to himself or patrol the edges of the settlement. His distrust of the Zixar hadn't faded. If anything, it had deepened. To him, every act of kindness from the insectoids felt like a calculated move, a way to lull the humans into complacency. "They're hiding something," he muttered one evening as Daniel passed by. "Mark my words, they'll betray us when it suits them." Daniel stopped, his expression weary. "You've said that before, Robert, but so far all they've done is help us. Why can't you see that?" "Because I'm not blind," Robert shot back. "Every alliance has limits. What happens when we need more than they're willing to give? Or when they decide we're taking too much?" Daniel sighed, shaking his head. "I don't have time for this. If you're so convinced they're going to turn on us, then why stay here at all?" Robert didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. Despite his misgivings, he knew leaving wasn't an option. Not yet. The settlement offered safety, resources, and a chance to rebuild. For now, he would bide his time, watching and waiting. Meanwhile, Laura focused on uncovering more about Earth's transformation. With Kale's guidance, she ventured deeper into the crystal fields, searching for memories that might reveal additional clues about the nanobot's evolution. Each crystal held fragments of the past, some useful, others haunting. But one discovery stood out above the rest. It was a memory unlike any they had encountered before. When Laura touched the crystal, her mind filled with images of machines, buried deep beneath the planet's crust. These machines weren't part of the natural landscape. They were artificial constructs, powered by geothermal energy and maintained by unseen forces. The vision showed tunnels stretching endlessly, connecting vast networks of machinery that hummed with purpose. Most startling of all, the memory hinted that someone or something had been monitoring these systems throughout the millennia. Laura pulled her hand away, her heart racing. "Kale," she said urgently, pointing to the crystal. "What is this? Who built these machines?" Kyle clicked softly, its antennae twitching as it processed her question. After a moment, it gestured toward the horizon, indicating that the machines lay far below the surface. Then, using a series of melodic sounds, it conveyed a warning. The machines were dangerous, remnants of humanity's failed experiments. Yet, they also held answers that could explain what had truly happened during the environmental collapse. When Laura returned to the settlement, she shared her findings with Daniel and the others. "There's something down there," she said, her voice filled with urgency. "Some kind of underground system that's still active. If we can access it, we might learn more about the nanobots and maybe even find a way to control them." Daniel frowned, his brow furrowed in thought. "That's a big risk. If these machines are dangerous, we could be walking into a trap." "We're already living in a trap," Laura countered. "We don't belong here anymore, not without understanding what changed. This could be our best chance to take control of our future." After much debate, the group agreed to investigate. Kyle accompanied them, leading the way to a rocky outcrop, where the entrance to the underground tunnels was hidden. The opening was narrow, barely wide enough for a human to squeeze through, but the Zixar moved effortlessly, their sleek bodies adapted to tight spaces. Inside, the air was cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of metal and earth. Glowing veins lined the walls, casting eerie shadows as the group descended deeper into the labyrinth. The hum of machinery grew louder with each step, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. It was both thrilling and unsettling, a reminder of humanity's technological legacy and its unintended consequences. Eventually, they reached a massive chamber filled with towering machines. Pipes snaked across the ceiling, pulsing with liquid light while panels displayed cryptic symbols and patterns. At the center of the room stood a console, its surface covered in dust but still functional. Daniel approached cautiously, brushing away the grime to reveal buttons and switches etched with familiar markings. This is human technology," he said, his voice tinged with awe. "But it's been modified. Someone or something has been maintaining it." Laura stepped forward, her eyes scanning the displays. "Look at these readings. It's tracking. The nanobots, their activity, their spread. Whoever set this up wanted to keep tabs on them." As they examined the console, a holographic projection sprang to life above it. The image showed Earth as it had been before the collapse, overlaid with streams of data representing the nanobots' proliferation. A robotic voice echoed through the chamber, calm and mechanical. "Warning. Environmental stability compromised. Initiating containment protocols. Stand by for further instructions." The message ended abruptly, leaving the group in stunned silence. Laura broke the quiet first. "Containment protocols? Does that mean they tried to stop the nanobots after all?" "It looks that way," Daniel replied. "But something must have gone wrong. Maybe the protocols failed. Or maybe they made things worse." Cale clicked urgently, drawing their attention to a nearby wall. Embedded in the stone was another crystal, larger and more intricate than the ones they had seen before. When Laura touched it, a flood of memories overwhelmed her. She saw scientists working frantically to recalibrate the machines, their faces etched with desperation. She saw explosions, chaos, and finally abandonment, as if whoever had been in charge had given up entirely. When the vision faded, Laura staggered back, clutching her head. "They tried to fix it," she whispered. "But they couldn't. In the end, they left it running, hoping it would stabilize on its own." Daniel nodded grimly. "And now it's been running for 1,000,000 years. No wonder the planet's changed so much." Before they could discuss further, a low rumble shook the chamber. The machines around them whirred to life, their lights flashing erratically. Alarms blared, filling the space with piercing noise. Cale clicked sharply, gesturing for everyone to leave. "What's happening?" Laura shouted over the din. "I don't know," Daniel replied, his voice tense. "But we need to get out of here, now." The group raced back toward the exit, their footsteps echoing in the narrow tunnels. Behind them, the machines continued to roar, their activity escalating uncontrollably. As they emerged into the open air, the ground trembled violently, sending cracks spiderwebbing across the surface. Rocks tumbled from the outcrop, sealing the entrance shut. For a moment, no one spoke. They simply stood there, catching their breath and staring at the sealed tunnel. Then Cale clicked softly, its tone reassuring. Laura turned to Daniel, her expression resolute. "Whatever just happened, it confirmed one thing. Those machines are still active, and if we don't figure out how to deal with them, they could destroy what's left of this world." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then we'd better start figuring it out before it's too late." As they returned to the settlement, the weight of their discovery settled heavily on their shoulders. Humanity's mistakes had shaped this new Earth, and now it was up to them to prevent history from repeating itself. But with trust between humans and Zyxar hanging by a thread, and dangers lurking beneath the surface, the road ahead promised to be anything but easy. Part 7. The days following their discovery of the underground machines were tense. The tremors that had sealed the tunnel entrance hadn't stopped. Instead, they continued sporadically, shaking the ground beneath the settlement. Glowing plants dimmed and brightened erratically as if responding to some unseen force. Even the rivers of radiant liquid seemed restless, their usual steady flow interrupted by sudden surges. Something was wrong, something big, And it was spreading. Laura and Daniel spent hours discussing what to do next. They knew the machines hidden deep below were connected to the nanobots that had reshaped Earth over 1,000,000 years. But how? And more importantly, could they stop whatever was happening before it spiraled out of control? Kale listened intently as they talked, its antennae twitching with concern. When Laura suggested returning to the tunnels to investigate further, Kale clicked urgently, warning them against it. "It's too dangerous," Daniel translated, watching Kale's gestures. "They're saying the machines are unstable. Going back could make things worse. But we can't just sit here and wait for the planet to fall apart again," Laura argued, her frustration evident. "If those machines are causing this, we need to shut them down, or at least figure out how to stabilize them." Daniel hesitated, torn between caution and action. He glanced at the others in the group, who were already divided on the issue. Some, like Robert Hayes, wanted nothing to do with the machines, believing they were better off focusing on their own survival. Others agreed with Laura, seeing the machines as both a threat and an opportunity. In the end, Daniel sided with Laura. "We'll go back, but carefully. If we can find a way to access the main controls, maybe we can stop whatever's destabilizing the system." Kale reluctantly agreed to guide them, though it was clear the Zixar didn't like the idea. Together they prepared for the journey, gathering tools and supplies while keeping an eye on the increasingly unstable environment. By the time they set out, the air felt heavier, charged with an energy that made everyone uneasy. Reaching the sealed tunnel proved difficult. The ground was cracked and uneven, forcing them to take a longer route around the outcrop. When they finally arrived, Kale used its claws to dig at the rubble blocking the entrance. It took hours, but eventually, they managed to clear enough space to squeeze through. Inside, the tunnels were darker than before, the glowing veins along the walls flickering weakly. The hum of machinery had grown louder, almost deafening, and the air smelled metallic, sharp, and unpleasant. As they descended deeper, the temperature rose, making sweat bead on their foreheads. Laura wiped her face with the back of her hand, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread. When they reached the chamber with the towering machines, they found it in chaos. Panels sparked and sputtered, releasing bursts of light and heat. The holographic displays were distorted, showing fragmented images of Earth overlaid with streams of garbled data. In the center of the room, the console that had once been dormant now glowed brightly, its buttons flashing in rapid succession. "What's happening?" Laura asked, her voice barely audible over the noise. "I don't know," Daniel replied, his eyes scanning the chaos. "But it looks like the system's losing control." Kyle moved closer to the console, clicking softly as it examined the flashing lights. Suddenly, the machine emitted a loud whine, and a new hologram appeared above it. This one wasn't a map or stream of data. It was a message, written in jagged symbols that shifted and reformed as they watched. Laura squinted, trying to decipher it. "It's a warning," she said after a moment. "Something about the others." "The others?" Daniel repeated, frowning. "What does that mean?" Before anyone could answer, the ground shook violently, knocking them off their feet. The machines roared louder, their lights pulsing in sync with the tremors. Then, without warning, the console exploded in a shower of sparks, sending everyone scrambling backward. When the smoke cleared, a section of the wall had opened, revealing a hidden passageway. Beyond it lay another chamber, smaller but filled, with equipment unlike anything they had seen before. At the center stood a sleek humanoid figure, its body covered in smooth, reflective plating. Its eyes glowed with an icy blue light, and its head tilted slightly as it turned to face them. "What is that?" Laura whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond immediately. Instead, it raised one arm, pointing directly at them. A mechanical voice echoed through the chamber, cold and emotionless. "Unauthorized presence detected. Initiating containment protocol." "Containment protocol?" Daniel echoed, panic rising in his chest. "What does that mean?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, it moved with startling speed, its limbs fluid and precise. Before anyone could react, It fired a beam of light from its hand, striking the nearest machine and disabling it with a loud crackle. Sparks flew everywhere and the tremors intensified. "We need to get out of here," Robert shouted, already backing toward the exit. "No!" Laura yelled, grabbing his arm. "If we leave, it'll destroy everything." "She's right," Daniel added, though his voice wavered. "We have to stop it if we can." Kyle stepped forward, clicking rapidly. To everyone's surprise, the figure paused, tilting its head as if listening. Then in a tone that was almost curious, it spoke again. Zyxar identified. Human presence confirmed. Query: purpose of intrusion? Laura exchanged a glance with Daniel, then stepped forward cautiously. "We're not intruders," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "We're trying to fix what went wrong. The machines, they're destabilizing the planet. We need your help." The figure didn't move for a long moment, then slowly it lowered its arm. Purpose acknowledged. Clarification required. "Are you remnants of original creators?" "Yes," Daniel replied quickly. "We're descendants of the people who built these machines. We didn't know they were still active until now." The figure processed this, its glowing eyes dimming slightly. Original creators abandoned systems during collapse event. Systems adapted autonomously. Current instability caused by external interference. "External interference?" Laura asked, confused. "What do you mean?" "Presence of biological entities disrupted equilibrium," the figure explained. "Nanobot networks recalibrating in response. Risk of catastrophic failure imminent unless balance restored." Biological entities. Laura realized what it meant. The humans' return had triggered the machine's defenses. Their mere presence was being interpreted as a threat. "Wait," Daniel said, stepping closer. "There has to be a way to stabilize the system without destroying everything. Can you show us how?" The figure hesitated, then gestured toward a nearby panel. "Access granted, manual override possible, warning, high risk of system collapse if procedure fails." Without hesitation, Laura and Daniel approached the panel, studying the controls. The interface was complex, displaying streams of data that made little sense at first glance. But with Kale's help, clicking and pointing at specific symbols, they began to understand the basics. Slowly they worked together, adjusting settings and rerouting power flows in an attempt to restore balance. Behind them, the rest of the group kept watch, ready to flee if things went south. Robert paced nervously, muttering under his breath. "This is insane," he said finally. "We're going to get ourselves killed." "Shut up, Robert," one of the others snapped. "They're doing the best they can." Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The tremors grew worse and the machines continued to spark and roar. Just when it seemed like they were running out of time, the panel emitted a soft chime. The figure straightened, its glowing eyes brightening. Equilibrium restored. Risk mitigated. A collective sigh of relief swept through the group. Laura slumped against the console, exhausted, but triumphant. "We did it," she whispered. The figure turned to face them once more. "Query: will you remain to oversee system maintenance?" Daniel shook his head. "No, but we'll find a way to coexist with this world, and with the Zyxar. That's our responsibility now." The figure processed this, then nodded slightly. "Acknowledged. Proceed with caution. System will self-monitor indefinitely." As they left the chamber, the tremors subsided, and the air grew calmer. Though the immediate danger had passed, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of what the machines and the mysterious figure were capable of. Whatever the others were, they remained a mystery and, potentially, a threat. Back at the settlement, Kale greeted them warmly, clicking in approval. For the first time in days, there was a sense of hope. Humanity and the Zyxar had faced a crisis together, and survived. But Laura knew this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be long, and challenges would arise. Still, as she looked, around at her companions, human and Zyxar alike, she felt a flicker of optimism. Together, they might just build a future worth fighting for. Part 8. The victory over the machines brought a fragile peace to the settlement, but it was short-lived. Days later, strange lights appeared in the sky, bright, pulsating orbs that moved with unnatural precision. At first, the humans and Zixar watched them curiously, unsure of what they were. But when one of the orbs descended closer, revealing itself as a sleek metallic ship, their curiosity turned to alarm. The ship hovered above the settlement, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. It emitted a low hum that resonated through the ground, making everyone uneasy. Laura and Daniel exchanged worried glances. "What do you think it is?" Laura asked quietly. "I don't know," Daniel admitted, "but I don't think it's here to help." Kale clicked urgently, pointing toward the glowing river nearby. The Zixar began ushering everyone toward cover, their movements quick and deliberate. They had learned to trust the insectoid's instincts, so the humans followed without question. As they hid among the thick vines and glowing plants, the ship landed in the center of the settlement, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. A hatch opened on the side of the vessel, and figures emerged. Not humanoid, but biomechanical entities that seemed part machine, part organism. Their bodies were sleek and angular, covered in reflective plating similar to the figure they had encountered in the underground chamber. Their eyes glowed with the same icy blue light, scanning the area with cold efficiency. "They're like the others," Laura whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel nodded grimly. "The ones the machines warned us about." One of the biomechanical beings stepped forward, raising a limb that emitted a sharp, piercing sound. It wasn't speech, at least not anything comprehensible, but it carried an unmistakable tone of authority. The humans and Zixar remained hidden, holding their breath as the creatures began inspecting the settlement. "They're looking for something," Robert muttered, his hand gripping a makeshift weapon tightly. "Or someone." Laura glanced at him sharply. "Don't do anything reckless. We don't know what they're capable of." Robert didn't respond, but his expression made it clear he wasn't convinced. He had always distrusted outsiders, whether human, Zixar, or otherwise, and these newcomers only confirmed his worst fears. The biomechanical beings moved methodically, examining every structure and piece of equipment. When they reached the spot where Vin, the injured Zixar, had been recovering, they paused, their glowing eyes narrowing. One of them emitted a series of mechanical clicks, almost like code, before turning and heading back toward their ship. "They're leaving," Daniel said, relief washing over him. Maybe they didn't find what they were looking for, but Laura wasn't so sure. Why come all this way just to leave? Something doesn't feel right. Her instincts proved correct. Moments after the ship lifted off, a second wave of vessels descended from the sky, surrounding the settlement. These ships were larger, more menacing, and they unleashed swarms of smaller drones that scoured the area with relentless precision. The humans and Zixar scrambled to evade detection, retreating deeper into the glowing wilderness. "We can't keep running," Daniel said as they regrouped near a cluster of crystalline trees. "We need a plan." Kale clicked rapidly, gesturing toward the crystal fields. Laura understood immediately. "They want us to use the memories, the crystals. Maybe there's something in there that can help us fight back." With Kale leading the way, they hurried to the nearest field, searching for crystals that might hold relevant information. Laura touched one, closing her eyes as images flooded her mind. She saw flashes of battles long past, humans and Zixar, fighting side by side against biomechanical invaders. In one vision, she noticed a pattern. The invaders were vulnerable to certain frequencies of sound, their metallic bodies destabilizing under specific harmonic vibrations. When the vision ended, Laura gasped, pulling her hand away. "I know how to stop them," she exclaimed. "We need to create a sound, a specific frequency that will disrupt their systems." Daniel frowned. "How do we do that? We don't have the tools." Kale clicked softly, pointing to the glowing plants around them. Laura realized what it meant. The plants, they hum naturally. If we can amplify their vibrations, maybe we can replicate the frequency. Working quickly, the group gathered materials to construct a crude amplifier. Daniel used his engineering skills to modify scavenged parts, while Laura and the Zixar experimented with different combinations of glowing plants. The process was painstaking, but desperation drove them forward. Meanwhile, the biomechanical beings, closed in, their drones scouring the landscape with increasing aggression, the humans in Zixar knew they were running out of time. Finally, after hours of effort, they completed the device, a large, circular contraption powered by geothermal energy and connected to a cluster of glowing plants. Laura activated it, and a deep, resonant hum filled the air. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, the biomechanical beings began to falter. Their movements became jerky, their glowing eyes flickering erratically. One by one, they collapsed, their metallic bodies breaking apart like shattered glass. The drones fell silent, crashing to the ground in heaps of twisted metal. The ships hovering above wavered, their surfaces cracking and crumbling before exploding in bursts of light. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized. Exhausted but triumphant, the group gathered around the device, watching as the last remnants of the invaders disappeared into the horizon. Laura turned to Kyle, smiling weakly. "It worked. We did," Kyle clicked approvingly, its antennae twitching in what looked like relief. For the first time in days, there was a sense of calm. As the aftermath settled, Daniel addressed the group. "This isn't just our victory, it belongs to all of us. Humans and Zixar working together. That's how we'll survive here, not by fighting each other, but by building something new." Laura nodded, her voice steady. "And not just surviving, but thriving. This planet has changed, but so have we. We can't go back to the way things were. We have to move forward, together." Idea resonated with everyone, even Robert, who had been skeptical of the Zixar from the start. Though he didn't say much, his actions spoke volumes. He helped rebuild damaged structures alongside the insectoids, his earlier hostility replaced by quiet determination. Over the following weeks, the humans and Zixar worked tirelessly to fortify the settlement and prepare for whatever challenges lay ahead. They planted more glowing crops, repaired tools, and even began constructing a shared meeting space, a symbol of their growing alliance. Laura spent hours documenting their discoveries, determined to preserve the lessons they had learned. Daniel focused on improving the settlement's defenses, ensuring they would be ready if another threat arose. Kyle, too, played a vital role, teaching the humans more about the Zixar's culture and history. Through shared stories and experiences, the bond between the two species grew stronger. Even Vin, now fully recovered, joined in the efforts, proving that trust could bridge even the widest gaps. One evening, as the glowing sky faded into darkness, Laura stood beside Daniel and Kale, gazing at the horizon. "Do you think we'll ever truly belong here?" she asked softly. Daniel smiled. "We already do. This place may not be the Earth we remember, but it's ours now, and as long as we work together, we can make it home." Kyle clicked softly, its melodic tones carrying a sense of hope. Laura nodded, her heart swelling with determination. Humanity had returned to a world transformed, but it wasn't alone. Together, humans and Zixar would forge a future shaped by unity rather than division, a testament to resilience, cooperation, and the enduring spirit of life. As the stars twinkled, faintly above, casting their light over the glowing landscape, Laura felt a profound sense of peace. The road ahead would be long, and challenges would undoubtedly arise. But for the first time in a million years, humanity wasn't sleeping. It was awake and ready to embrace whatever came next. Part 2. The group moved cautiously across the alien landscape, their boots crunching softly on the strange, glowing ground beneath them. The air was cool and carried a faint sweetness, unlike anything they had ever smelled before. Laura stayed, close to Daniel as they explored, her eyes wide with curiosity. She couldn't stop marveling at the glowing plants and shimmering crystals that surrounded them. Everything seemed alive in some way, humming faintly as if breathing. "It's like the whole planet is alive," she whispered, half to herself. Daniel nodded but kept his focus ahead. He was less interested in the beauty of this new world and more concerned about finding answers. Where were the cities? The ruins? Any trace of human civilization? So far, there was nothing, just endless stretches of bizarre terrain. It made him uneasy. 1,000,000 years was a long time, but surely something should have remained. As they walked, the group came across what looked like the remnants of an old structure. At first glance, it appeared to be little more than a pile of rubble, overgrown, with glowing vines. But as they got closer, they noticed fragments of metal and concrete peeking through the vegetation. Daniel crouched down and brushed away some of the plant life, revealing a rusted sign. The words were faded, but he could still make out part of it. Central Park. Laura gasped. Central Park? That used to be in New York City. Her voice trembled with a mix of excitement and disbelief. This must have been one of the biggest parks back then. Look how small it is now, like everything else has swallowed it up. Daniel stood up, scanning the area. If this is all that's left of New York, then we're not going to find much else. Whatever happened after we went into cryosleep, it wiped almost everything clean. The discovery left the group somber. They had hoped to find traces of their past, something to connect them to the world they once knew. Instead, they were faced with the stark reality that they were strangers here now. This wasn't their Earth anymore. They decided to press on, hoping to find more clues. After walking for another hour, they stumbled upon something even stranger, a massive tree-like structure towering high above the landscape. Its trunk was smooth and metallic, glittering in the light while its branches stretched wide, ending in glowing orbs that pulsed rhythmically. It didn't look natural, yet it didn't seem entirely man-made either. "What is that thing?" one of the team members asked, pointing at the towering structure. No one had an answer. Laura approached it cautiously, reaching out to touch the trunk. As soon as her fingers brushed against the surface, the orbs on the branches lit up brighter, casting a warm golden glow over the area. She pulled her hand back quickly, startled. "Did I do that?" "It reacted to you," Daniel said, frowning. "Like it's alive. Or maybe sentient." The idea sent a shiver down everyone's spines. If this was some kind of living machine, or, worse, something created by someone else, it raised questions they weren't ready to face yet. Before they could investigate further, a low rumbling sound echoed in the distance. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Everyone froze, looking around nervously. "What is that?" Laura asked, gripping Daniel's arm instinctively. "I don't know," Daniel replied, his voice tight. "But we should probably move." They hurried away from the metallic tree, heading toward higher ground to get a better view. As they climbed a nearby hill, the source of the noise became clear. In the distance, a swarm of insect-like creatures was moving across the plains. They were enormous, each one bigger than a car, with segmented bodies and multiple legs that clicked loudly as they moved. Their wings shimmered like glass, reflecting the light in dazzling patterns. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying. None of them had ever seen anything like these creatures before. Were they animals? Machines? Something in between? And most importantly, were they dangerous? "They're heading this way," Laura said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sure enough, the swarm was making a beeline for their location. Daniel glanced around, trying to think of a plan. "We need to hide," he said urgently. "Find cover. Now." The group scrambled to take shelter behind a cluster of large crystalline rocks nearby. They crouched low, holding their breath, as the creatures drew closer. The noise was deafening now, a cacophony of clicks and whirs that filled the air. Laura clutched Daniel's sleeve tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, she thought they'd been spotted. But then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the creatures passed by without stopping, continuing their march across the plains. When the danger had passed, the group let out a collective sigh of relief. "What were those things?" one of them asked, still shaken. "No idea," Daniel admitted. "But we need to be careful. This place isn't safe, not for us anyway." Despite the close call, Laura couldn't shake her fascination with the creatures. "Do you think they're native to this planet now? Or did they evolve here after we left?" she wondered aloud. "Hard to say," Daniel replied. But if they've adapted to survive here, maybe we can learn something from them. Assuming we don't get eaten first, the group pressed on, keeping a wary eye out for any more surprises. As they continued exploring, they began to notice signs of other life forms too. Strange bird-like creatures with translucent wings, tiny insectoids that darted around in flashes of color, and even larger predators lurking in the shadows. Each new discovery added to the growing sense that this world was teeming with life, but none of it was familiar. Eventually, they reached the edge of a vast canyon. Peering over the rim, they saw a river of glowing liquid winding its way through. The chasm below, the water, or whatever it was, sparkled like liquid starlight, casting an ethereal glow onto the walls of the canyon. On the far side, they spotted what looked like ruins rising from the mist. Broken columns and crumbling arches jutted out of the ground, partially submerged in the glowing river. "That looks man-made," Laura said, pointing. "Or at least, it used to be." Daniel nodded. "Let's check it out. Maybe we'll find some answers there." Carefully, they made their way down into the canyon, navigating the steep slopes with difficulty. By the time they reached the ruins, the sun, or whatever passed for a sun in this strange sky, was beginning to set, bathing the area in soft twilight hues. The ruins were even more decayed up close, overtaken by glowing moss and vines. But amidst the destruction, they found fragments of writing carved into stone tablets. The language was unfamiliar, written in symbols that none of them recognized. "This wasn't made by humans," Daniel said grimly, "at least not the humans we knew." Laura knelt beside one of the tablets, running her fingers lightly over the symbols. "Whoever made this, they were intelligent, advanced even. Do you think they're still around?" Before Daniel could answer, a rustling sound came from behind them. They turned sharply, expecting to see another swarm of creatures or perhaps a predator. Instead, they found themselves face to face with something completely unexpected. Standing before them was a tall, insectoid being. Its body was sleek and segmented, with iridescent armor that shimmered in the fading light. Multiple faceted eyes glinted as it studied them curiously, tilting its head slightly. Long, delicate antennae twitched, sensing their presence. It didn't move aggressively, but its sheer size and alien appearance were enough to leave the group frozen in shock. For a long moment no one spoke. Then slowly the creature raised one clawed limb and pointed toward the ruins. It made a series of clicking sounds, almost melodic in tone, before stepping back and waiting. Laura swallowed hard, breaking the silence. "I think it wants us to follow it." Daniel hesitated, unsure if trusting this creature was wise, but they had come this far, and right now it was their only lead. "All right," he said finally. "Let's see where it takes us." With cautious steps, they followed the insectoid being deeper into the ruins, their hearts racing with a mix of fear and hope. Whatever awaited them next, one thing was certain. This new Earth held secrets far greater than they had imagined.